My name is Rob Wiley, and today I'm speaking with Austin employment lawyer Colin Walsh about age discrimination. Colin, what protections do older workers have in terms of protecting their employment and their job?
An employee cannot be fired simply because of their age. If an employee is over the age of 40, then it would be against the law to fire them because they're over the age of 40 or because they're old.
Well, let me ask you this question. Let's say that you have a situation in which you have, somebody who's fairly senior in management, folks that are in their maybe 50s or 60s, and they're being replaced by people that are in their 40s. Everyone's over 40. Could that still be an age discrimination violation?
That definitely could be age discrimination. Employers try to make that argument all the time. Well, we fired all of the older workers, so it couldn't possibly be age discrimination because we fired everybody, or because we fired all of the 60-year-olds but retained all of the 50-year-olds or the 40-year-olds. Those are all potential age discrimination claims that you should talk to an attorney about.
Well, and one way that we sometimes see age discrimination cases come up is in the context of a layoff, where the employer goes through, and it's not just laying one person off, but laying off a whole lot of people, and they're saying, oh, well, we're just going in a different direction, or we're restructuring. When should someone who is an older worker be concerned if they're put into a layoff?
Well, you're right that is a very common way that age discrimination happens today. And the governments recognize that, and they passed what's called the Older Workers Benefits Protection Act. And under that act, an employee who is part of a mass layoff, an older worker, is entitled to know who else was part of that mass layoff, including their job title and their age, and how many other people were part of that. If an employer doesn't provide that information, that certainly raises suspicions that age was a factor in that layoff.
And if it looks like it's targeting older workers, there's statistical analysis, there's different ways that you can look at it to find out if in fact that layoff is targeting older workers. Well, sometimes it's not just a layoff, but it's something more specific that's done to an individual person. What are some of the touchstones or some of the ways that you've seen age discrimination arise in the workplace?
Well, there's a lot of ways that we see it. So a lot of companies, they won't come out and say you're being fired because you're old, although that does happen sometimes. Most of the time we see code words being used. We want new blood, fresh blood, a new energy. You're old-fashioned, or you're out of touch, you're a dinosaur. We want more energy. Indicative of age discrimination, because more than likely that employer is replacing you with a younger employee because they're going to allege that younger employee, just by being younger, has more energy, is more in touch. And so you should really talk to an employment attorney about whether these things have been happening.
Well, and another way that sometimes I see age discrimination arise is in training. An employer has a younger employee, and so they suddenly start investing resources and training and things like that in that younger employee, but they'll have someone who's in their 50s or their 60s, and they just aren't investing the same amount of training. And then that has an effect on that person's ability to continue performing their job or to be able to qualify for promotions, or ultimately then being selected for a layoff if a layoff comes around. Last thing about age discrimination, as I understand it, it doesn't apply to all employers. You have to be, a particular size. Is that true?
That is true. You have to have over 20 employees in order to be protected under the Federal Age Discrimination and Employment Act. In Texas, however, it's only 15 employees. So you do have more protections against age discrimination here in Texas. But an employment lawyer is going to be best able to handle these questions about whether or not that particular employer is covered.
Thank you, Colin.